Hey, sorry. I had to leave there because I got a knock at the door. I'll be discussing that later. God, I got so much going on. Well, whatever. Where did I leave off? Oh, right. I had just walked in the house. Yeah, that house was creepy. When Maya and I walked in together, we immediately gave each other the look. Something was off. Autumn was nowhere to be seen, and the other girls weren't getting there for another hour or so. As we were heading in the doorway, I told Maya that we should probably quickly head inside. Considering it was the beginning of December around 5:45, it was pitch black outside, and I felt like something was going to jump out and attack me at any second. So with that being said, we grabbed our luggage and we got through the door. The house smelled kinda like old people, I guess? Maybe pine, I don't even remember. But I do remember that it wasn't exactly a smell that I enjoyed. Maya asked me where Autumn was, but I told her I was just about to ask her the same exact question. I took out my phone from my back pocket to try and text her, but then I remembered that we had no service. Her car was in the driveway though, so she had to be somewhere in here. We decided that we should probably explore the house a little bit and hopefully find her along the way. I was pretty hesitant. There was only one light on in the kitchen a few feet away from us, but everything else was dark, and there was no visible light switch or lamp in sight. Maya took a couple steps first, and I followed behind her. I wasn't able to take 5 steps before passing a coat closet. I of course had a weird feeling about it, and before I could even process those feelings, Autumn jumped out of the closet and screamed at Maya and I. Maya screamed, but I had no reaction whatsoever. I've been through a lot, you remember? After Autumn laughed until she fell on the floor, she engulfed the two of us in a hug. After we exchanged our hellos, Autumn gave us a tour of the house. It was a lot bigger than I expected. We all had our own room, and there was a big living room, kitchen, and game room in the basement. I was starting to think that a couple nights wouldn't be that bad. By the time we got done, Caroline and Logan arrived within a couple minutes of each other. We once again all exchanged our hellos. I must admit, it was pretty cool to be back with these girls. We haven't been in the same room together since, I think, high school graduation, and even then, we weren't all friends. Caroline mentioned that she was exhausted from driving, even though her ride was only 2 hours, and Logan chimed in with the same thing. Autumn seemed kind of upset that they wanted to go to bed so early, but they assured her that we would do fun stuff tomorrow. And with that being said, we all picked a room and went to bed for the night. I was with Autumn on this one. It wasn't even that late. This is FourFinger, the story of a group of friends finding out that their time left to live is limited, but it's done so in an unusual way. Episode 2, January 19th, 2003. I remember that night pretty vividly. I could not fall asleep for the life of me. I was up until about 2 a.m. just staring at the ceiling. There was nothing to do here by myself. Plus, it was a creepy cabin in the woods. This is horror movie material. And once I finally fell asleep, it was not a good sleep at all. In the morning, I felt like I had just gotten hit by a bus. I went downstairs around 7 a.m., and Autumn was of course up and at 'em, making breakfast. She gave me a very enthusiastic good morning, and I reciprocated, even though I wasn't in the mood to. I did really appreciate her gesture, though. She's the bride, and yet she's doing all these things for us. And to add on to it, I haven't had a homemade breakfast in years. This was almost like a dream to me. Anyways, I sat on the couch to wake up for a couple of minutes, and over time, the rest of the girls started to come downstairs. Caroline was the first one down after me, and let me just say, she did not look good. You know those cliche chick flicks where a girl first rolls out of bed and her hair is so crazy and it kind of looks like a bird's nest? Yeah, that's basically what it looked like. Autumn also gave her a cheerful hello from the kitchen, but she didn't say anything. She just plopped down on a chair next to the couch that I was on. From prior experience, I know not to speak to her before she gets her hair brushed. Next was Logan, and there's not too much to say about her, as always. She went over to sit with Autumn while she cooked. And last, of course, was Maya. That's the one thing I remember really well about the sleepovers that we used to have. She would always be the last one awake, and yet she always woke up looking like she just spent hours making her hair look good. I had no idea how she always did it, but she never failed. We all sat around for a couple of minutes as Autumn finished up breakfast. She set up this big buffet-style breakfast: eggs, bacon, pancakes, and waffles. She was really going all out for this thing, but that was her personality in general. She was very giving. We grabbed our plates and sat in the living room to eat, and it was very quiet, but it was very nice at the same time. It was sort of like we were all in the high school cafeteria again, just sitting around eating crappy food, except this time it was actually really good. As we were finishing up, Autumn asked the group if there was anything specific that we wanted to do that day, and everyone had a different idea. Logan surprisingly chimed in first, and she said that we should go visit an abandoned asylum down the road. This didn't even surprise me whatsoever. She always had weird ideas for us to hang out in high school. Everyone just kind of looked at each other when she said this, but she assured us it would be fun. It didn't really convince me though. Caroline jumped in after that and said that we should do something illegal but memorable, like rob a 7-Eleven or something. Logan seemed to like that one too. I liked the idea, but at the same time, all I wanted to do was sleep. I suggested that we take a day to ourselves and do whatever we want throughout the house. After all, this place was pretty big. But of course, no one seemed to like my idea. Maya chimed in and said that we should do a girls' day. We all sit around, talk amongst a fire, drink hot chocolate, do each other's nails, all that kind of stuff. We could get everything we needed from the store down the road. But of course, the tomboy of the group hated that idea, Caroline. At this point, it was just kind of frustrating. We'd been sitting around for 15 minutes just staring at each other while wondering what to do. I wished Autumn would just choose something. It was her party after all. And as soon as I was ready to tell someone to actually pick something, Autumn's eyes lit up, and she suggested that we do them all. Maya said she really liked the idea, which actually surprised me. I don't think I mentioned this before, but Maya was never really the biggest fan of Autumn in high school. She could tolerate her, but her whole school spirit, cheerleader, boyfriend-obsessed vibe never really sat well with her. I think that's why we got along so well, because I occasionally would get annoyed with her as well. But all this aside, Caroline of course hated the idea. She said something along the lines of not wanting to touch Logan's man hands when it came to the possible manicures we were going to do. But Logan was also not a fan of the idea either. She said she would rather be sick than get a manicure by any of us girls. Offended, Autumn mentioned that this was her wedding weekend, and she thought it could be fun for all of us to do something we would all like. I mentioned that I agreed with Autumn. I wanted to get this trip over with, so we might as well make it as fun as we possibly can, and Maya agreed with me. At this point, I just wanted to get out of the house, so I told everyone I was going upstairs to get dressed, and they all followed to their respective rooms. We met back downstairs after 15 minutes. I got downstairs first, and the rest of the girls shortly followed afterwards. Caroline was rolling her eyes the entire time before the 5 of us walked out the door to leave. As we were leaving, we collectively decided that we would venture into the asylum first. We would do a little exploring, and then drive the few miles down the road to the convenience store. The asylum was about a mile through the woods, so we figured it would be easier to walk, plus no one knew how to get there on roads, if there were any roads. We could see it in the distance through some of the trees, so we just walked that way. As always, Autumn was the leader. She stayed in front, with Logan and Caroline right behind and talking to her. I was a couple steps behind, and Maya was a few steps in front of me. We stayed silent for a quarter of the walk. No reason in particular, just nothing to talk about, I guess. Maya randomly turned around and stood in place until I caught up to her. It was obvious that she wanted to tell me something. As I caught up, she started walking right next to me, making sure to glance in front of us to see if the girls in front were listening. When she realized they weren't, she said something along the lines of, "Did I tell you what I heard from Brian Huxley a couple months ago?" God, I thought Brian Huxley was dead, honestly. Wasn't exactly a goody two-shoes in high school. And she proceeded to tell me something that I was not ready for. Brian had heard a rumor that after high school, when a majority of our class was still in college, Logan was admitted to an insane asylum by her own mother. My jaw dropped to the ground. I wasn't exactly shocked, but it was the last thing I was expecting as we were walking to an insane asylum. I immediately asked her if it was this insane asylum, even though it was abandoned, but she wasn't sure. I had so many questions that I wanted to ask her, but Autumn slowed up to tell us that we were close to the asylum, and from there, the other girls were too close. Honestly, I wish there was more to tell you about this day. Once we got to the asylum, it just went downhill. In terms of the fun. I feel like when you go to an abandoned asylum like that, you need to either find a way to break in or you think someone's following you. I don't know, something like that. But there was nothing. I don't know if it was me killing the fun, but there was just nothing exciting or scary. The other girls reacted differently though. Logan did the most exploring, while the rest of us girls followed her around. She looked through every room. At some point she acted pretty frantic. Autumn was scared, of course, ready for something to jump out at her at any moment. Maya and I didn't care that much, and Caroline was obviously complaining the entire time. Once we ended up lapping the entire place, we collectively decided that we should move on to the next activity. Logan suggested that she stay there and catch up with us later on, but we all knew it kind of sounds like a bad idea to stay in an abandoned asylum by yourself in the middle of nowhere. Once again, horror movie material. With this, we decided to make our way back to the cabin. When we got back, we all got in Maya's car to head to 7-Eleven for snacks and the drugstore for the girls' night. The drive was about 5 miles down the road, so it only took like 10 minutes or something. On the ride there, I couldn't help but think about how this whole situation was just sort of weird. What kind of bachelorette weekend is spent in a cabin in the woods in the middle of nowhere? I mean, if that's what you're into, that's fine. But this just wasn't very Autumn to me. She's the type who would go to Vegas or something. I don't know. It was her decision. We went to the drugstore first, and there was no one in there. I decided that I didn't want to steal anything, considering the owners were going to stare at us on the way out. Caroline, on the other hand, filled her bag with stuff. I still don't know how she got away with it. The owners watched her walk out with a bag that doubled in size since she walked in. But I mean, she did get us a majority of the stuff that we needed. Logan and I paid for the other things. We then walked over to 7-Eleven, and to be honest, we stole everything there. We all got 2 to 3 snacks each and just decided to walk out. I miss those days, where the teens who just watched over the store would cover for you and pretend like everything was fine when the owner walked in that night. As we headed back home, we blasted some music up the road. Spice Girls, NSYNC, TLC, you know, some oldies but goodies. Maya thought this would get us all excited for the girls' night we were about to have. We might as well make the most of it, right? We dragged all our things inside and put them in the living room. Before we started the girls' night, we all decided that we should put our pajamas on. I quickly went upstairs to my room and picked out sweatpants and a t-shirt. I had just put the shirt over my head when I heard the most blood-curdling scream I have ever heard. Thanks for listening to Chapter 2 of FourFinger. Tune in on November 26th to find out who that scream came from. Be sure to follow our Instagram at FourFinger Podcast to get some sneak peeks and behind the scenes of future episodes. While you're waiting for the next episode, be sure to check out podcast372.com for some more original student-produced podcasts.